Night settles over ancient Crete like a soft blue veil, letting the Aegean winds drift through olive fields, quiet courtyards, and painted walls glowing under moonlight. Here, the Minoan world breathes slowly, steady waves, gentle footsteps, warm earth, and calm routines, inviting you into a peaceful civilization. A soft breath from the island of Crete. Night falls gently upon the island of Crete, unfolding slowly, as if the sky itself were laying down a cool, deep blue cloth across the land. The Aegean Sea whispers against the shore, carrying with it the warm breath of distant waters. As the breeze drifts inland, it brushes through rows of olive trees, touches the smooth stones of old pathways, and settles lightly on rooftops made from clay and sun-dried earth. Everything becomes softer, quieter, wrapped in a calm that, under the moon's pale glow, the colors of the Minoan world rise into view. Warm red columns, ochre-painted walls, swirling patterns shaped by hands, long accustomed to beauty. Nothing dazzles, nothing shouts. The island glows the way embers glow beneath a hearth, slow, steady, and full of quiet life. Even the great Palace of Knossos, with its winding corridors and airy courtyards, seems to stretch peacefully, as though near the shore, fishermen return from the sea with the unhurried grace of people who trust the rhythm of the waves. Their wooden boats drift toward the docks, nudged along by currents that know the way better than any map. Ropes slide gently against weathered hulls, creating soft sounds like cloth brushing against cloth. When fresh fish is lifted from the boats, the air fills with a mild, salty scent that blends naturally with the smell of rosemary, thyme, and olives simmering over small home fires. Nothing is rushed. Everything hums at the island's own pace. Farther inland, the vineyards shimmer faintly under moonlight. Dew hints. Time itself behaves differently on Crete. It does not tick or hurry. It unfolds the way petals open or tides return, giving every moment the space it needs. People move with that same measured ease. Potters shaping clay without hurry, weavers guiding threads into patterns that feel almost like music, and farmers tending the land with steps as steady as the heartbeat of the island. Crete awakes in the early mist. The first light of morning arrives on the island of Crete, not with sudden brightness, but with a gradual, almost shy glow that spreads across the Aegean Sea like a soft breath easing into the day. The horizon brightens from a deep blue to a gentle silver, and the waves respond with a hush, rolling in slow, even pulses against the shore. It is a familiar rhythm, older than any memory, older than the painted walls of Knossos, older even than the first hands that shaped the early Minoan pots. It is the island's way of saying that the day has begun, but there is no rush. Everything may unfold quietly at its own ancient pace. Slight mist lingers along the coastline, drifting in thin ribbons above the water. It curls around the pebbles, the clay jars left near the fishermen's huts, and the low stone walls marking the edge of the olive fields. The mist is never in a hurry, much like the people of the island. It takes its time, touching the earth lightly before rising into the warming air. For the Minoans, this moment between night and day is not a boundary, but a gentle blending, one breath slipping into another. Across the calm land, the early households of Crete begin to stir, though stirring here means a slow, deliberate movement rather than any sort of bustling activity. A potter might be the first to open his doorway, stretching with the kind of ease that makes it unclear whether he is preparing for the day or simply admiring the morning. He steps outside barefoot, letting the cool earth press softly against his soles. The clay he will work today is already soaking in a shallow basin, waiting to be transformed into bowls, jugs, and storage jars. It, too, seems to be taking its time. Not far from him, a woman checks the small garden beside her home. She sweeps aside dew-heavy leaves to see how the herbs fared overnight. The mint is thriving as always. The sage is calm and steady, and the thyme seems to have grown a little too enthusiastically, as though it heard the first whispers of dawn and wanted to join in. She gently tucks its branches back into place, speaking to it softly, not because she expects the thyme to respond, but because the land has always felt like a quiet companion. In the olive orchards stretching across the hillsides, the trees stand still and grounded, their branches full with the promise of oil that will flavor meals, soften light in clay lamps, and smooth the skin of the people who use it. The olive groves have seen thousands of such mornings. Their trunks twist in shapes only time understands, giving the landscape an appearance of quiet wisdom. A few early workers move among the trees, checking the nets laid out beneath them. The workers speak little. They are content to watch the birds hop from branch to branch, fluffing their feathers in the cool dawn. A small breeze passes through the leaves, making a soft whisper, a sound so gentle that one might mistake it for the trees sighing in their sleep. Closer to the shore, the fishermen prepare their small wooden boats. The vessels are simple but reliable, made by steady hands and guided by generations of knowledge of the sea. The men work without urgency, securing ropes and smoothing out nets, sometimes pausing to greet a neighbor walking by. One fisherman yawns so widely that a passing gull glances down at him with what might be mild curiosity. The man chuckles and waves at the bird as though greeting an old friend. Nothing on Crete is hurried, not even the fish, waiting in the sea. The water itself is a scene of stillness. Light breaks across it in shimmering streaks, as though someone brushed a giant cloth of silver over the surface. Tiny ripples move outward from the fishermen's boats. The waves make no demands. They simply invite the morning to settle. Each sound blends gently into the next. The light creaking of wood, the soft splash of an oar, the distant call of a goat discovering that it is awake earlier than expected. A little inland, the pathways between houses and workshops begin to warm under the rising sun. The walls of Minoan homes, painted in earthy reds, soft browns, and pale creams, absorb the early light, glowing gently. The buildings, set close together in community clusters, create a sense of shared rhythm. Neighbors pass one another with slow nods, carrying baskets woven from reeds. Some baskets hold fresh figs or small loaves of bread baked the night before, still carrying a faint, comforting aroma. Others contain tools wrapped in cloth, ready to begin another day of simple yet skilled work. At the edges of these clusters, women begin to spin wool using drop spindles that twirl with balanced, unhurried motion. The spindle descends, rises, turns again. The movement could lull anyone into calm if they watched it long enough. Nearby, a child tries to imitate the rhythm, but with far less success. The thread breaks, the spindle wobbles, and the child laughs softly. The mother smiles, smoothing the wool between her fingers before handing the spindle back. Guiding the motion, with practiced gentleness. Nothing in this moment aims for perfection. It aims only for peace. As the sun climbs higher, the mist thins, rising over the hills until it becomes indistinguishable from the sky. Now the details of the island reveal themselves more clearly. The terraced fields stretching across slopes, the vines creeping slowly along wooden frames, the goats wandering in pairs, often appearing to make important decisions about which bush looks most appetizing. The animals move with a relaxed confidence, as if they too are citizens of Crete, with a morning routine to maintain. Along a wide stone path leading toward the central areas of Knossos, traders begin their journey. They carry jars filled with honey, baskets of olives, rolls of linen cloth, and small decorated boxes containing aromatic herbs. These goods are not carried with haste, but with mindful steadiness. Each step follows the last, with a rhythm as measured as the sea's tide. The traders occasionally stop to adjust their baskets, or to greet someone walking downhill with equal calm. Conversations float gently through the air, never rising above a comfortable murmur. When the traders pass near the palace complex of Knossos, the morning takes on a more colorful tone. The thick, sturdy columns, a deep red at the base and black at the top, stand proudly beneath the waking sun. Frescoes adorn the walls with scenes of lilies, dolphins, dancers, and gentle processions. The colors appear softer in the morning light, as though even the paintings prefer to start the day slowly. A painter sits nearby, mixing pigments in a clay bowl. He tries to recreate the exact shade of blue used for the dolphins, but ends up with something closer to the color of a sleepy wave. He shrugs contentedly. Close enough, he thinks. The dolphins on the wall seem to smile anyway. Within the palace grounds, quiet footsteps move along the smooth floors. Workers prepare for the day with motions that blend seamlessly into the calmness around them. They carry jugs of water, roll out woven mats, open shutters to let in the breeze. There is a feeling of spaciousness, not only in the wide halls, but in the unhurried nature of every action. Even the cats that wander through the corridors do so with gentle dignity, pausing occasionally to inspect a corner or judge whether a sunbeam is comfortable enough for a nap. By now, the island is fully awake, though awake on Crete is far from the bustling energy found in future eras. Here, awakening means that everything has simply shifted into a slightly brighter form of its nighttime self. The sea continues its slow breathing. The olive trees continue their soft whispering. The people continue their calm steps, weaving, shaping, tending, and sharing. The day unfolds as a long, steady exhale. And as the morning stretches on, the island of Crete offers a quiet assurance. The world here is gentle, the rhythm ancient and steady, and each moment is allowed to pass without urgency. In this peaceful landscape, time does not push. It drifts, like mist, rising slowly from the sea, inviting all who witness it to drift along as well, carried softly into the heart of the Minoan day. The gentle rhythm of Minoan life. The day on ancient Crete unfolds with the softness of woven linen, each hour slipping gently into the next. As the early mist lifts from the hillsides, the Minoan world settles into its familiar rhythm, a steady, unhurried pulse shaped by earth, sea, and simple routines passed quietly from generation to generation. Morning light spreads across the fields, warming the terraces carved into the island's slopes. Here, Grains sway in the breeze. Barley with its feathery tops, wheat with its calm golden hush. Farmers move among the rows with deliberate steps, carrying baskets or wooden tools polished smooth by use. They pause often, not out of fatigue, but because Crete encourages a kind of thoughtful slowness. A potter passing by might stop to greet a farmer. A farmer might bend to push a curious goat away from a patch of seedlings. And the goat, of course, pretends not to understand, but returns to nibbling something it shouldn't. Food for the Minoans is never rushed. It begins in the fields under the sun, with hands guiding the soil gently. Olive orchards stretch across the hills, their twisting trunks shaped by centuries of wind. The leaves shimmer pale silver as the breeze moves through them, creating a soft rustling that sounds almost like a whispered conversation between old friends. Workers gather fallen olives into wide baskets, humming lightly. They sort them with patient care, knowing each fruit will later become oil, rich, smooth, and golden, used for cooking, lighting, and soothing the skin after long days. Nearby, small gardens flourish in neat rows, cucumbers curling among vines, onions resting in the earth, beans climbing wooden stakes, and herbs spreading aromatic leaves into the air. Rosemary touches the morning with its pine-soft scent. Thyme drifts upward in tiny clusters. Oregano adds warmth to even the simplest meal. A woman leans over her garden, brushing dew from a cluster of figs. She picks a few, places them into a clay bowl, and smiles when she notices a bird inspecting her work with apparent seriousness, as if deciding whether to approve her selection. Honey plays a silent but important role in the gentle world of the Minoans. On the outer edges of the villages, beekeepers tend to cylindrical clay hives stacked neatly in rows. The bees, still drowsy in the early light, move in slow, lazy circles, as if still deciding whether morning has officially begun. The beekeeper crouches beside the hives, listening to the soft hum, steady and low, like a small lullaby woven into the air. He checks the hives carefully, lifting a piece of comb, glistening with honey the color of warm amber. Its sweetness will brighten every part of Minoan life, mixed with grain, drizzled over fruit, blended into wine, or used as a gentle balm. Some of the honey is set aside for winemakers working near the foothills. In a shaded courtyard, clusters of grapes gathered from nearby vineyards lie in woven baskets. Their skins shimmer in colors ranging from pale green to deep purple. In the cool morning air, winemakers crush the grapes slowly, letting the juice flow into clay vessels. The work is rhythmic and almost meditative. The press of foot or hand, the slight splash, the faint fragrance rising. It is not messy chaos, but a soft turning of fruit into something new. A young assistant, watching a grape escape and roll away across the courtyard stones, laughs quietly before retrieving it, placing it back into the basket as though returning a runaway child to its family. The Minoan approach to winemaking is unhurried. The grape juice rests in large pithoi, tall clay storage jars partially buried into the ground to keep them cool. The vessels breathe with the land itself, allowing the liquid inside to transform gently, slowly into wine. There is no rush. If the island knows anything, it is the time is best allowed to move at its natural pace. Around midday, scents from household kitchens drift into the air. Meals here are simple, warm, and shaped by the island's gifts. Freshly baked bread with a crisp, golden crust. Olives seasoned with herbs, fish grilled over small clay hearths, lentils simmered with onions, vegetables drizzled lightly with oil, children gather around low wooden tables, snacking on figs or grapes while the adults prepare the meal. The atmosphere is always quiet, not silent but calm, filled with soft conversation, gentle movements, and the occasional humorous moment when a dog tries to sneak a piece of bread and fails, tail wagging in exaggerated innocence. The dairy workers tending their goats and sheep earlier in the morning now prepare cheeses in shaded corners of their homes. The curds rest in woven baskets, draining slowly. Goat's milk cheese, soft and slightly tangy, blends beautifully with the herbs gathered that morning. Women in the household sprinkle thyme or mint into the mixture, pausing occasionally to taste, nod, and add just a little more. Never too much, never too little. Even the act of storing food carries a sense of artistry. Amphorae stand lined up along cool storerooms, each vessel painted with spirals, waves, lilies, or stylized dolphins. They hold grains, oil, dried figs, salted fish, wine, and honey. The painted symbols serve both as decoration and as quiet reminders of what lies within. One might see a jar adorned with a swirling ocean pattern and know instantly that it contains fish preserved with herbs, or a jar with golden curls, indicating the sweetness of honey. In the late afternoon, the island settles again into a familiar softness. Farmers finish their work and sit beneath olive trees, sharing small bowls of ripe berries. Beekeepers close their hives gently, whispering a promise of return. Winemakers check the vessels, resting in the shade. And children chase shadows cast by the setting sun, their laughter floating lightly over the fields. The Minoans live not by clocks, but by sensations. The warmth of stone, the sound of wind through reeds, the changing scent of the sea, and the steady presence of the land. Their daily rhythm is one of quiet abundance, where every task is an extension of peace, every harvest a continuation of harmony, and every shared meal a pause in which the island itself seems to breathe with them. Here in the heart of Crete, life moves gently, and in that gentleness, an entire civilization thrives. The Palace of Knossos, a maze of soft colors. The Palace of Knossos rises gently from the landscape of Crete, not as a fortress or a rigid monument, but as a sprawling, harmonious labyrinth of open spaces, painted columns, airy corridors, and sunlit courtyards. Even from a distance, the palace seems less like a structure made of stone and more like a living rhythm, an extension of the island's calm breath. Its walls catch the morning light in warm tones, making the entire complex appear softly awakened, as though stretching after a long night of quiet. The architecture of Knossos is shaped not by sharp edges or imposing heights, but by curves, layers, and wide terraces that welcome wind and sun. The builders of the Minoan age favored openness, windows without glass to let breezes drift through, rooms arranged in gentle succession rather than strict order, and staircases that turn slowly rather than abruptly. The palace was not made to intimidate, but to flow, to let people move freely, and to let light fall wherever it wished. As you approach the outer courtyard, the most striking sight is the rows of red columns, their wide tops narrowing toward the base. Their colors, deep red at the bottom, soft black at the top, give the building a warm and comforting appearance. These columns look almost like inverted trees, rooted upward into the sky, holding the weight of terraces and roofs with quiet strength. When the breeze brushes past them, They seem to hum with the island's slow heartbeat. Inside, the palace opens into a series of halls where walls bloom with frescoes. These paintings are not stiff or solemn. They dance with color and movement, showing lilies swaying in imaginary breezes, dolphins gliding across azure backgrounds, and people in flowing garments stepping lightly through scenes of festivals. The painters of Knossos were masters of softness. They captured motion in curves, joy in color, and life in small details, like curled petals or bright eyes. One of the most beloved frescoes shows a group of dolphins leaping through an ocean of deep blue. Their bodies curve with such natural grace that one might imagine them slipping off the wall and returning to the sea outside. When workers pass through the hall in the morning, they often glance at the dolphins as though greeting old companions. Some swear the dolphins look slightly different each day, depending on the angle of the sunlight. Others suggest the dolphins simply enjoy playing tricks on visitors. The painters, if alive to defend themselves, would probably smile quietly and allow the rumor to grow. In another room, large lilies stretch upward in vivid reds and whites. The petals curl with such tenderness that one might assume they were painted by someone who spent long afternoons simply watching flowers move in the wind. These frescoes do not merely depict nature, they seem to breathe it, weaving the outside world into the heart of the palace. Walking deeper inside Knossos, you find hallways that twist softly, turning left, then right, then opening into small rooms filled with pottery, wooden chests, and woven mats. The layout flows like a river, not because it was meant to confuse, but because it was meant to feel organic, like the branching of roots or the winding of a stream. Light enters from unexpected angles, casting shapes that move gently across the floor as clouds drift above. In one chamber, the large storage jars, pithoi, stand partly embedded in the floor. Their rounded bodies hold grains, oil, and wine. The air inside is cool, and faint scents linger. Olive oil with its warm softness, fermented grape with a light sweetness, and grain with the comforting smell of sun-dried fields. Workers move among the jars at a slow pace, checking their contents, sometimes brushing dust from the painted symbols that identify what each jar holds. Because symbols replace words, even those who cannot read written scripts understand the meaning. A swirling pattern for oil, a wave pattern for wine, a grain motif for barley. Further inside, rooms meant for weaving are filled with soft threads draped across wooden frames. The women working here wear long skirts that brush the floor, their hands moving with gentle precision as they guide strands of wool and flax into patterned cloth. The sound of weaving is almost musical. A soft tap, a faint pull, a whisper of thread sliding into place. Sometimes a worker pauses to untangle a knot, smiling as she does so. Knots are nothing more than threads trying to greet each other too enthusiastically. Knossos also has open courtyards where administrative tasks take place, but even these unfold without harshness. Scribes sit on low stools with clay tablets in their laps, carving symbols into the wet surface with small wooden styluses. They work methodically, marking inventories, trade records, or festival preparations. Occasionally, a scribe pauses, stretches his back, and watches a passing cat who looks as though it owns the courtyard. The cat's calm steps remind everyone that even work should follow the rhythm of the day, not the pressure of time. In another section of the palace, staircases descend into lower levels where cool chambers hold tools, vessels, and bits of colored plaster awaiting restoration. The temperature shifts noticeably, offering a quiet respite from the warm air above. Here, workers study broken pottery with gentle curiosity, piecing together fragments like a slow puzzle. If a piece does not fit, they do not sigh or hurry. They simply turn it a little, examine the edges, and try again, with patient amusement. Life within Knossos is not grand in the way of future palaces. It is grand in softness. Artisans, scribes, weavers, cooks, and administrators move through it with the same steady rhythm, their lives woven into the architecture that twists like a story told in calm spirals. The courtyards echo with soft footsteps, the smell of fresh bread, the faint clatter of pottery, and the quiet hum of conversations drifting between rooms. In the evening, when the sun lowers and casts golden light across the walls, the palace glows. Its colors deepen, its shadows lengthen, and the frescoes seem to warm as though absorbing the day's final breath. A gentle breeze flows through the open windows, stirring linen curtains and carrying scents of thyme and sea salt through the corridors. Here, within the winding embrace of Knossos, the Minoan world reveals itself not through force or grandeur, but through harmony, colors that soothe, spaces that breathe, and a design that reflects the calm, ancient soul of the island. And in this soft labyrinth of life and art, time drifts slowly, as if the palace itself were dreaming. The artisans who kept life in rhythm. In the gentle world of Minoan Crete, artisans were the quiet keepers of daily harmony. Their hands shaped the colors, textures, and tools that filled each home, each courtyard, each marketplace. They did not rush or strain. The island itself encouraged a measured pace. Work was simply another way for the people to breathe with the land. Among these artisans, the potters, the weavers, and the bronze workers formed the soft heartbeat of village life. Their craft carried not only skill, but a certain warmth, one that flowed naturally into the objects they created. To watch them work was to watch a silent dance, each movement unfolding with patience and subtle grace. The potters, turning clay into quiet beauty. Every morning, the potters of Crete made their way to workshops where clay rested in smooth, cool heaps beside shallow basins of water. The clay here came from the island's rich earth, gathered from riverbanks and hillsides, where it formed naturally in soft layers. It was pliable, calm, ready to become whatever shape the potter envisioned. Inside the workshop, the air carried the familiar, comforting scent of wet clay, a smell that seemed to hush the room. Potters sat behind their wheels, spinning them with gentle strokes of the foot. The wheel began to turn, slowly at first, then with steady rhythm. The potter's hands rested on the clay lump, coaxing it upward as though helping a drowsy creature wake. Clay responded kindly to patient hands. A soft touch, a slight pressure, a careful lift. Each gesture encouraged the vessel to grow taller or rounder. When the potter leaned back to observe their work, the wheel hummed quietly beneath the shape forming above it. Of course, even in a world as calm as Crete, clay has a sense of humor. Every now and then, a vessel that seemed perfectly obedient would wobble mysteriously. A wall would lean too far, a lip would sag, and sometimes the entire pot would slump dramatically to one side, as if the clay had simply decided it needed a nap. When this happened, the potter rarely frowned. Instead, a soft chuckle filled the workshop, followed by a shake of the head that suggested, well, not every pot is meant to stand proudly. The clay was gathered again, pressed into a solid mound, and the potter began anew, unfazed. Even mistakes here had a softness to them. By afternoon, the workshop shelves filled with elegant amphorae, painted jars, small bowls, and slender cups, many decorated with waves, spirals, dolphins, or sprouting plants. Some pieces would hold grain or wine, others would carry oil or herbs. All were shaped with the gentle precision that marked Minoan craftsmanship. The weavers, threads guided by calm hands. A short walk from the pottery yard led to the weaving houses where the air always seemed full of color. Skeins of dyed wool hung from beams, deep red made from madder, soft yellow from saffron, cool blue from crushed minerals, warm brown from nutshells, and every shade in between. The colors seemed to sway lightly whenever the breeze slipped through an open doorway. Inside, tall wooden looms stood like friendly guardians. Women worked at them with rhythmic motions, passing the shuttle through the warp threads, beating the cloth gently into place, then repeating the cycle with the kind of steadiness that could lull anyone nearby into quiet peace. The sound was soothing, a soft tap, a whisper of thread sliding, the wooden loom creaking ever so slightly. Weaving in Crete was both practical and poetic. Fabrics created here became clothing, blankets, wall hangings, and decorative cloths used in homes across the island. Patterns were often inspired by the sea, the undulating stitch of a wave, the loop of a dolphin's path, the curve of a shell. Floral designs appeared often as well: lilies, papyrus, and small blooming shapes that looked as if they had drifted straight out of the Minoan gardens. Children occasionally wandered into the weaving room. They sat cross-legged on the floor, watching the threads dance up and down. One girl, trying to imitate her mother, once attempted to weave on a small practice loom. She pushed the shuttle through the wrong way, making the threads twist themselves into an enthusiastic knot. Instead of frustration, the mother smiled softly, untangling the knot with gentle fingers. "It seems the threads are excited today," she said, stroking her daughter's hair, and the weaving continued, smooth as ever. Cloth finished in the weaving houses felt alive. It held the warmth of the hands that made it, the calm of the loom's rhythm, and the breath of the morning wind that had drifted through the open windows. The bronze workers, shaping tools with quiet strength. Not far from the weaving houses, the bronze workshop glowed with a warm, steady light. Unlike the pottery or textile spaces, the bronze area smelled of earth, metal, and faint smoke. Yet even here, everything unfolded with unhurried balance. Bronze workers began their day by examining tools and molds laid out on stone tables: chisels, blades, hooks, small knives, and decorative items. The Minoans used bronze not for weapons, but for tools, ornaments, and household objects. The atmosphere was calm, without the clangor one might associate with later metal industries. The fires burned low and steady in clay furnaces, giving the room a soft, golden glow. Molten bronze, shimmering like liquid sunlight, was poured carefully into stone or clay molds. The workers moved with practiced certainty, their gestures controlled and peaceful. When the metal cooled, they removed the objects, refining edges with slow, deliberate strokes. The rhythm of filing and polishing felt almost meditative, like waves brushing stone. One bronze worker, known for his steady hands, occasionally found that the goats from nearby pens had developed a fascination with his workshop. They liked to poke their noses inside the doorway, peering suspiciously at the molds. Sometimes he sighed and shooed them gently, though more often he fed them small bits of herb stems left over from lunch. The goats, believing themselves helpful assistants, would linger nearby, making the workers smile as they shaped bronze into tools that would be used in fields and workshops across the island. The artisan rhythm. Life in soft synchrony. By late afternoon, pottery cooled in the sun, woven cloth hung in folds, and bronze tools gleamed on stone tables. Artisans stepped back to admire their work, not with prideful boast, but with quiet satisfaction. Their creations were not just objects, they were part of the island's gentle order. The sounds of their crafts blended into a soft symphony, the hum of the potter's wheel, the shuttle's whisper on the loom, the faint rasp of metal filing, the laughter drifting from one workshop to another. Each craft supported the next. Jars held grain for the weavers' families. Tools shaped the looms. Cloth lined the pottery shelves. Bronze knives prepared materials for dyeing. It was a circle of life, simple and unbroken. As the sun lowered, warm light pooled across the courtyards. The artisans washed clay from their hands, draped cloth over finished looms, and set bronze tools neatly aside. The day's work ended as gently as it began, with slow steps homeward and conversations about small things, the color of the sky, the behavior of goats, the thickness of threads. In the quiet of evening, the products of their labor shimmered softly, jars painted with spirals, fabrics full of living color, and tools polished to a calm shine, all waiting to be used when the next day dawned. And thus, through hands steady and hearts peaceful, the artisans of Crete kept the island's rhythm alive, one soft movement at a time. The Minoan harbors, voyages of quiet tides. The coastline of Minoan Crete awakens each morning with the slow breath of the Aegean Sea. The harbors, nestled in small bays where the land curves inward like an open palm, come alive not with noise, but with a soft murmuring carried on the wind. Wooden ships rest gently against the docks, their hulls painted in warm earth tones that blend with the sand and stone around them. Everything in these harbors feels as though it has grown naturally from the sea's edge, shaped by waves and sunlight, rather than by force. The Minoans were skilled sailors, but their relationship with the water was never hurried. They approached the sea with familiarity, like speaking with an old friend. Their ships, long, slender vessels carved from sturdy timbers, were crafted with care. Each plank was smoothed by patient hands, each joint tied and sealed with resin that smelled of pine and warm earth. A shipbuilder might stand back from his work, run his hand along the curved hull, and nod in quiet approval. Nothing more needed to be said. The wood carried the knowledge of generations. Early in the day, the harbor air is cool and filled with the mingled scents of salt, damp rope, olive oil jars stacked for transport, and herbs hanging from shaded stalls. Fishermen and traders move with slow, steady steps. They do not rush to load their ships. Instead, they let the morning light settle fully on the water before pushing off. Ropes slide over wooden posts, nets are arranged neatly on the decks, and clay amphorae are placed carefully in rows to keep the ship balanced. Every action flows easily into the next. The harbor itself is a gentle bustle. A group of merchants inspects pottery destined for islands across the sea, elegant jars painted with spirals and flowing lines. A woman sorts through bundles of saffron, its threads glowing warm gold in the sunlight. A young boy carries a basket of figs toward a ship, pausing whenever a gull swoops down too closely, its wings slicing the air with lazy confidence. The gulls here seem convinced that every basket must contain something meant for them, and the people indulge them with playful tolerance. One can hear the light tapping of craftsmen adjusting planks on a nearby boat. The sound echoes softly across the water, blending with the soft creak of wooden masts shifting in the breeze. A few sailors sit on the edge of the pier, dipping their feet into the cool water while discussing the day's route, a short trip to a nearby island for olive oil exchange, or a longer journey to the Cyclades with textiles and painted vessels. When a ship finally pulls away from the dock, it does so without flair. Oars dip into the water in smooth, synchronized strokes. The sea parts easily, allowing the vessel to glide forward. The sound of the oars creates a steady pattern, shh, dip, like the breathing of the sea itself. A few small waves ripple out behind the boat, spreading across the harbor's calm surface until they fade into stillness. Out at sea, the world widens. The Aegean stretches in every direction, shimmering beneath the sunlight. The Minoan sailors know these routes well. They navigate by the coastline's familiar shapes, the position of the sun, and the gentle winds that come and go with predictable kindness. The water is not a barrier, but a pathway, connecting Crete to nearby islands and faraway shores. The sea guides them, carries them, and embraces their wooden ships with its long, ancient rhythm. On board, the scent of the sea clings to everything: the wood of the ship, the coils of rope, the amphorae filled with wine, oil, or sweet honey. Sometimes a sailor brings along a small basket of herbs tied with string. When the wind grows stronger, he waves it lightly across the deck to share the fragrance. Rosemary, thyme, or mint mingle with the salt air, creating a soothing aroma that fills the lungs with calm. The sailors often speak softly to one another, not because silence is required, but because the gentle atmosphere of the sea encourages it. One sailor may point toward a distant island rising from the horizon like a blue shadow. Another may comment on the color of the water, shifting from clear turquoise to deep sapphire as the boat moves farther from shore. The conversations flow as slowly as the waves around them. As the ship reaches open water, the coastline floats into view behind them, its cliffs glowing softly in the morning sun. Terraced fields and olive groves appear as patches of pale green. Villages dot the land like small clusters of warmth. And above it all, the mountains rise gently, not harsh or jagged, but rounded and calm, shaped by time and wind. Farther along the route, the sailors encounter other Minoan vessels. The ships pass one another with friendly gestures, raised hands, tilted baskets showing traded goods, or simply peaceful nods. The sea lanes here form a quiet network, a gentle weaving of routes that bind Crete to the Cyclades, to mainland Greece, to coastal Anatolia, and even to North Africa. Trade is not a frantic exchange, but a soft sharing of life's essentials. Olive oil, grains, ceramics, textiles, copper, herbs, and sweet wine. When a ship nears another harbor, perhaps on a small island with white cliffs or rocky coves, the arrival is always serene. The water becomes shallower and clearer, revealing smooth stones beneath. Fishermen wave from the shore. Children run to the water's edge, splashing their feet as the ship approaches. The sailors guide the vessel gently toward the dock, the wood brushing lightly against the shore as ropes are tossed and secured. Trade begins not with loud bargaining, but with calm conversation. A potter from Crete shows his delicately painted jars to an island merchant. A woman from the island offers honeycomb gleaming with golden sweetness. A fisherman contributes a basket of dried fish, seasoned with herbs. The goods change hands with smiles, nods, and the soft rustle of cloth wrapping each item. After the exchange, sailors sit beneath shade trees or on low stone walls to rest. They dip bread in olive oil, snack on figs, or share a sip of wine. Their laughter is gentle, carried away by the sea breeze. Sometimes they trade stories about small mishaps, like the time a goat wandered onto a ship and refused to leave until offered a fig, or when a curious dolphin swam alongside the boat for half the journey, seemingly supervising their navigation. As afternoon shifts toward evening, the sailors prepare for their return to Crete. The sea softens into long, glowing ripples as the sun lowers, the wind cools, and the ship moves homeward at an easy pace, guided by the familiar rhythms of tide and sky. By the time the harbor of Crete comes into view again, the lights of home flicker softly. The smell of cooking fires drifts across the water. Herbs, fish, bread. The sailors' hearts match the calm of the scene. As the vessel glides back into its resting place beside the pier, the island seems to welcome it with a warm, steady breath. And thus, in voyages woven with softness, the Minoans shaped a world where the sea was not a challenge, but a serene companion, carrying their ships gently across the quiet blue paths of the Aegean. A rounded culture, dance, music, festivals. On the island of Crete, where the sea breathes in long, steady waves and the hills roll gently under the sky, the Minoan people nurtured a culture woven from softness. Their days were shaped not only by work, but by celebrations, moments where the island gathered itself into circles of music, movement, laughter, and shared warmth. These gatherings did not burst with noise or urgency. They unfolded like petals opening beneath the sun, slow and effortlessly bright. The soft pulse of ancient music. Music played a central role in Minoan life, drifting through courtyards, echoing against columns, and weaving through open-air terraces. The instruments were simple yet soulful, each offering a different shade of sound to the island's calm atmosphere. The lyre, made of gently curved wood and smooth strings, produced soft, shimmering notes. Its sound carried lightly on the breeze, neither sharp nor demanding. When a musician plucked the strings, the tones rippled outward like tiny waves, swirling through the air before settling into silence. Sometimes the musician paused mid-song, simply to enjoy how the last note drifted away, as naturally as a feather floating down. The flute, carved from reeds that grew along the river banks, offered a breathier, more soothing voice. It did not pierce the air. It wandered through it, as if humming to itself. Children often followed the sound with curious smiles, trying to guess whether the flute was imitating birds or the wind. Another favorite was the frame drum, stretched with leather and played with fingers rather than force. Its beats were soft, steady, meant to echo the gentle rhythm of footsteps on earth. When the drum joined the lyre, the music grew into a kind of ancient lullaby, calming, warm, and grounding. And then there was the sistrum, a small rattle that shimmered rather than shook. Musicians used it sparingly, adding delicate jingles like tiny stars chiming far away. Used in moderation, it created a texture that felt almost like light. These instruments, when played together, produced a soundscape that matched the soul of Crete, flowing, rounded, never abrupt. Even those who did not dance sat near the musicians, letting the calmness settle into their breathing. Dance. Movement. As light and gentle as wind. Minoan dance was not a performance of drama or athletic showmanship. It was an expression of joy, friendliness, and connection. People danced in circles, sometimes small, sometimes wide, moving their steps to the rhythm of drums and lyres. Their hands rose lightly, their skirts swayed, and their motions resembled leaves stirred by a quiet breeze. One of the most beloved dances was inspired by the island's graceful bulls. Unlike later depictions from distant centuries, the Minoan version of this tradition was gentle. Dancers moved around a carved wooden bull figure placed in the center of the courtyard. They leapt, not with fear or tension, but with playful lightness, as though skipping across stepping stones. Their motions were soft arcs, smooth bends, and long flowing turns. Sometimes a dancer misjudged a step and landed with a small stumble. Instead of embarrassment, the stumble sparked soft laughter from the audience. Someone clapped in support. Musicians adjusted their rhythm to match the dancer's recovery, and the entire circle continued with even greater warmth. In Crete, mistakes were not flaws. They were simply unexpected moments turned into shared amusement. Children, eager to imitate the older dancers, formed their own tiny circles nearby. Their steps were clumsy but enthusiastic, their jumps unpredictable, and their giggles constant. A few goats, sensing a festive atmosphere, occasionally trotted into the circle, believing themselves invited guests. The children did not mind. They simply included the goats in their patterns, dancing around them as if this had been the plan all along. Festivals, the island's soft gatherings. Minoan festivals were celebrations of abundance, art, and the natural world. They took place in courtyards, along hilltop terraces, near springs, or by the sea, anywhere the community could gather under the sky. The festivals followed the seasons, planting in spring, harvesting in summer, storing grains in autumn, and resting in winter. At the heart of each festival was the shared table. Long mats were laid out, woven with colorful threads. People brought bowls of olives, baskets of figs, fresh bread, herbs simmered in oil, soft cheese shaped by hand, and wine stored in elegant painted jars. Everything carried the fragrance of the island: warm earth, herbs, and hints of sea breeze. The meals were simple but generous. Elders sat comfortably on cushions, exchanging soft stories about years when the barley grew especially tall, or when the goats became mischievous during harvest. Their voices carried a tone of affection, as if time had taught them that every season deserved appreciation. Nearby, younger adults arranged flowers, lilies, poppies, wild herbs into woven garlands. They decorated doorways, pottery, hair, and even the wooden beams of meeting spaces. The scent of flowers mingled with roasted barley and sun-warm fruit, creating a fragrance that wrapped the entire celebration in a gentle embrace. As afternoon slipped into evening, the music deepened. The lyre notes became warmer, the drum beats slower. People gathered in larger circles, preparing for the night's dances, the air filled with quiet anticipation. Not the tense kind, but the peaceful knowledge that something beautiful was about to unfold. Dancers stepped forward wearing wide belts, soft skirts, and light jewelry that shimmered softly in the firelight. Their movements began slowly, arms rising like tides, feet tracing smooth arcs across the stone flooring. The circles tightened, expanded, and rippled outward in elegant waves. Sometimes, as the firelight flickered, the frescoes painted on nearby walls seemed almost alive. Dolphins leaping, lilies swaying, dancers bending gracefully. The Minoans did not worship these images. They simply enjoyed the sense that art and life flowed into one another. A culture rooted in softness. What made Minoan festivals unique was their lack of tension. There were no contests, no harsh displays, no rivalry. Instead, everything centered around sharing music, movement, food, laughter, and the peaceful presence of the island itself. Even the sea played a part. Waves rolled gently against the shore, carrying reflections of firelight and distant stars. The breeze softened, brushing across woven mats, clay cups, and dance circles. The entire island seemed to hum quietly, with the rhythm of celebration. As the night deepened, families sat together under the open sky. Children drifted to sleep with sounds of lyres in their ears. Adults continued their soft conversations, speaking of harvests, journeys, and changes in the color of the sea during different seasons. Stories blended with music until they were almost indistinguishable. And when the festival finally quieted, the island settled into a tranquil calm. The firelight dimmed, the drums ceased, the dancers rested, but the softness of the celebration lingered in the air like a warm, gentle glow. In these gatherings, through music, dance, and shared moments, the Minoan people held their world in harmony, honoring life with joy that flowed like water, unbroken and serene, a culture shaped by color, a rhythm shaped by breath, a joy shaped by the sea. The brown-red houses along the hillside. The hills of ancient Crete hold their homes the way a calm hand cradles small treasures. Scattered across gentle slopes, the Minoan houses stand in earth-toned rows, brown walls warmed by the sun, red borders framing doorways, and pale wooden beams stretching beneath roofs of clay tile. From a distance, they look like a quiet village painted in warm strokes along the curve of the land, blending softly with olive groves, vineyards, and stone paths that wind like sleepy rivers toward the sea. Each home is built with care, though never in a rigid pattern. Minoan families preferred natural shapes, letting their houses adapt gently to the terrain. A wall might curve slightly around a rock, a doorway might sit at a small angle to catch the morning breeze, and windows are often placed simply where the light falls best. There is no strict uniformity, only harmony with the hillside. Inside these homes, the air is cool and carries the scent of clay, herbs, and the faint sweetness of dried figs stored in baskets. Floors are smooth plaster, soft under bare feet. Rooms connect easily to one another, not through long hallways but through open arches and short steps. Light moves through the space with ease, entering through high windows that invite the sea wind to wander wherever it wishes. The heart of the home, the quiet kitchen. Every Minoan household is anchored by its kitchen, simple yet full of warmth. The kitchen is rarely a place of clatter. Instead, it echoes with the soft sounds of wooden spoons, clay lids being lifted, and ingredients rustling quietly in woven baskets. In the early part of the day, a woman might kneel beside a clay hearth, stirring a small pot of barley seasoned with thyme and honey. The mixture thickens slowly, releasing steam that curls into the air like tiny ribbons. Beside her, a girl helps crush herbs with a stone pestle. She works with serious concentration until a sudden breeze scatters a few leaves across the floor, prompting a wide-eyed pause from the child, as if the herbs themselves decided to go exploring. The mother laughs softly, gathers the runaway leaves, and the grinding continues. Slightly more controlled this time. Clay jars line the kitchen walls, each marked with painted patterns, spirals for grain, waves for oil, little leaf shapes for herbs. When a jar is opened, its scent rises into the air, rosemary sharp and fresh, mint cool like early morning, oregano warm as afternoon sun. The ovens are made of smooth clay shaped into gentle domes. When bread is placed inside, the smell fills the entire house, drifting out the windows and into the narrow paths between homes. Neighbors passing by may pause, inhale deeply, and offer a cheerful comment like, "It smells like your bread is trying to start conversations again." To which the baker, pleased but pretending modesty, replies, "It's just being friendly." Rooms filled with warm daily routines. Beyond the kitchen lies the living space, a low room filled with woven baskets, wooden stools, simple shelves, and mats made of reeds. The walls sometimes hold small painted decorations, spirals, flowers, simple animals. These images are not grand works of art, but gentle touches of comfort placed by the family's hands. Children often play on the floor, building tiny structures from rounded stones or shaping dough into imaginative creatures before the dough is, much to their disappointment, returned to the real baking. A goat wandering through the open doorway may inspect their creations with suspicious interest. If the goat attempts to taste one, the children erupt into giggles as they gently push it away. The goat leaves, unconvinced but not insulted. In another corner, an elder sits, weaving a small basket, fingers moving with steady precision. The rhythm of weaving is soft, almost like breathing. The sound of reeds sliding into place mixes with the murmured conversation drifting through the house. Nothing urgent is ever said. Only small observations about the weather, the harvest, or which neighbor's cat has been visiting too often. The upper floor. Breezes, lofts, and evening calm. Many Minoan homes have an upper floor where the family rests and works during the warmer hours of the day. Wooden stairs rise gently along the wall, polished by the touch of many hands and feet. Upstairs, the rooms are open and airy. Curtains sewn from woven cloth sway slightly in the breeze. Beds made of wood and rope hold soft mats stuffed with wool. These sleeping spaces are simple but comfortable, filled with a sense of calm that seems to gather like quiet sunlight. A woman may sit near a window, spinning wool into thread. The spindle drops, twirls, rises, a slow, steady motion. Each rotation adds length to the thread that will later become a garment or blanket. She sometimes watches the hillsides as she works, admiring how the light shifts across the olive groves. If a bird lands nearby and looks boldly into the room, she might greet it softly, as though the bird were checking on her progress. The upper rooms are also used for storing pottery, tools, and textiles. Shelves hold folded cloth in shades of saffron, soft blue, and warm brown. Stacked jars keep dried fruit and figs. Bowls contain beads made from shell and bone, small, delicate pieces waiting to be strung into necklaces or sewn onto clothing for festivals. Life outdoors, courtyards and hill paths. Outside each home, stone steps lead down to small courtyards. These spaces are shaded by grapevines or wooden canopies, creating cool spots where families gather to eat or work. A clay jug of water sits nearby, dripping condensation in the heat. When someone lifts the jug to pour a drink, the coolness spreads through their hands, like a quiet blessing from the hillside air. Courtyards are also where stories are shared. Elders tell tales of seasons past, how one year the figs ripened early, or how once a particularly bold goat climbed onto a neighbor's roof and refused to come down until given a handful of herbs. The goat, they say, acted with the confidence of someone who owned the entire village. Everyone laughs, and the story continues to grow with each retelling. From the courtyard, narrow paths snake upward across the hillside toward other homes. These paths are lined with stones and bordered by wildflowers. As families walk along them, they wave to neighbors, exchange baskets of figs or olives, or simply pause to admire the distant view of the sea. Evening, when the hillside softens into quiet. As the sun lowers, the houses glow warmly, their red and brown walls catching the last light. Smoke rises in thin wisps from a few hearths. The sound of distant flutes or evening conversation drifts between homes. Sometimes a potter walks by carrying a newly fired vessel, still warm from the kiln. Sometimes a child runs past, chasing shadows. Sometimes a cat stretches along a wall, watching everything with sleepy half-interest. When night finally arrives, the hills become a gentle quilt of warm shapes resting under the sky. Families settle into their homes, doors left slightly open to let the night wind wander in. Lamps burn with olive oil, casting soft light across pottery, mats, and sleeping faces. And the brown-red houses, steady and familiar, seem to breathe with the same calm rhythm as the sea below. In these hillside homes, life is simple, tender, and full of gentle humor, shaped by earth, softened by wind, and carried forward by the quiet, timeless heart of the Minoan world. The seafarers with poetic hearts. The Minoans were born to the sea, not with urgency or conquest in mind, but with a kind of serene companionship. For them, the Aegean was not an obstacle to cross, but a friend to visit, a shimmering path to travel, a quiet storyteller whose waves spoke of islands, breezes, and the patient work of time. And among the people of Crete, none understood this quiet friendship better than the Minoan sailors. They were the island's gentle wanderers, moving between shores with steady hands and open hearts. Their voyages were not defined by distant battles or harsh storms, but by the calming rhythms of oars dipping into water, sails catching slow winds, and the horizon stretching like a soft blue thread toward the sky. The dawn before the voyage. Before any journey began, the sailors gathered at the harbor while dawn was still stretching across the sea. The sky turned from deep indigo to soft rose, as if waking slowly alongside them. The wooden ships rested at the docks, their curved prows carved with simple designs, spirals, dolphins, small waves that seemed to smile in the morning light. Sailors moved quietly around their vessels, checking ropes, smoothing the hull with practiced palms, and arranging the amphorae of water, fruit, honey, and bread that would sustain them throughout the trip. No shouting, no rush, only the murmured greetings of men who knew each other well, and the occasional laugh when someone misplaced a coil of rope that turned out to be right behind them. One young sailor, known for his habit of talking to the sea as though it were an old aunt, crouched near the edge of the water and dipped his fingers into the cool waves. "Be gentle today," he whispered with a smile. The sea, as always, responded with a soft ripple, as if acknowledging his request. Setting out. A slow, steady glide. When the sun finally lifted above the horizon, the sailors pushed off from the dock. The wooden boat glided away with barely a sound, leaving behind small trails of bubbles that shimmered briefly before disappearing. Oars slipped into the water like long, graceful wings. The strokes were synchronized, not through strict discipline, but through the natural ease of people who had rowed together for many seasons. The sea greeted them with a surface as smooth as milk. The faint wind carried the scent of herbs from the hillsides they were leaving behind, rosemary, thyme, and the earthy sweetness of olive groves warming under the rising sun. The ship's sail unfurled gently, catching a mild breeze that nudged the vessel forward with the tenderness of a guiding hand. The sailors leaned back, letting the sea do most of the work. Life aboard. Quiet moments on an open sea. Aboard the vessel, time slowed into a soft current. A few sailors sat cross-legged on the deck, carving small wooden figures, dolphins, birds, or playful goats with curved horns. Their knives moved lightly, shaving curls of wood that drifted away like tiny ribbons in the wind. Others prepared a simple meal, bread dipped in olive oil, figs split open to reveal their pink sweetness, and a small amount of honey stirred into warm water. They shared quietly, passing food across the deck with warm smiles. Eating on the boat always made the figs taste sweeter, the bread softer, and the honey richer. Perhaps it was the sea air, perhaps it was the stillness. One sailor began to hum softly. His melody was simple and repetitive, like the sea itself. Soon others joined, some quietly, some only in spirit. Their music drifted across the water, blending with the sound of waves tapping gently against the hull. A flock of birds flying overhead seemed to pause, circling affectionately, as if listening before continuing on their way. From time to time, a dolphin approached the ship, curving gracefully out of the water. The sailors greeted the animal like an old friend, waving and leaning over the edge to watch the dolphin swim alongside them. The creature moved with such effortless joy that it seemed to coax a soft laugh out of even the most reserved sailor. Arrival at a friendly shore. As the ship neared a small island, the coastline slowly emerged from the blue. White cliffs touched with gold, small beaches, and low houses clustered near the shore. The sea grew even calmer, as if smoothing itself politely for the sailors' arrival. Docking the ship was an unhurried ritual. Ropes were passed, knots tied with practiced ease, and amphorae lifted from the deck onto the warm stone pier. Islanders greeted the sailors not with fanfare, but with warmth. Fruit baskets offered, hands clasped in welcome, quiet laughter exchanged. The two communities shared goods with gentle conversation. The sailors offered olive oil, pottery painted with spirals and flowers, cloth dyed in deep blues and reds. The islanders gave honeycombs dripping with sweetness, herbs tied in fragrant bundles, and baskets of small fish dried in the sun. No bargaining, no tension, only simple exchange. A restful interlude. Before returning home, the sailors often spent a little time near the shore. They sat under shade trees with clay cups of cool water, watching children play in the shallows. A few sailors wandered inland, admiring fig orchards or touching the smooth stone walls of hillside houses. They observed without intruding, taking in the calm life of the island. One sailor sat quietly by the water and sketched the coastline with a piece of charcoal. His drawing was simple but honest: gentle hills, soft waves, boats that looked like sleeping animals. He tucked the sketch into his pack with a satisfied nod, as though capturing a pleasant thought to revisit later. The journey home. When the time came to return, the sailors stepped back onto their ship with renewed calm. The sea welcomed them once again, its surface glinting with afternoon light. The wind carried them steadily toward Crete. A few small waves nudged the boat, but always in a friendly, playful way. More like a pat on the shoulder than any kind of challenge. As the coastline of Crete came into view, the sailors felt the familiar comfort of home. The brown-red houses on the hills, the olive groves shimmering like a soft mosaic, and the faint sound of flutes drifting from distant courtyards. They rode the last stretch slowly, savoring the moment. At the harbor, friends and families waited with baskets of bread and figs, greeting the returning sailors with easy smiles. The sailors stepped onto the dock, stretching their arms and lifting their packs. Someone cracked a joke about a sailor whose hair had been rearranged by the persistent sea breeze, prompting gentle laughter from everyone nearby. A seafaring life shaped by peace. The sailors of Minoan Crete did not seek glory on the water. They sought harmony, movement guided by the sea's own breath, journeys shaped by curiosity rather than ambition, and moments of connection across islands that shared the same gentle horizon. Their voyages were poems written in water, their steps measured in tides, their hearts quiet as the Aegean at dawn. And so, with every soft journey, they carried the peace of Crete across the tranquil blue pathways of the ancient world. Fresco art, stories told in color. In the quiet corridors and open courts of Minoan Crete, the walls were never empty. They carried stories, not written with words but painted in flowing strokes of blue, red, gold, and soft brown. Frescoes unfolded across the surfaces like living tapestries, scenes shaped by the island's calm nature and the people's gentle admiration for beauty. These paintings were not meant to overpower the viewer. Instead, they invited the eye to wander peacefully, discovering details slowly, the way one might explore a familiar shoreline. The Minoans understood color not as a tool of drama, but as an expression of harmony. Their palette reflected the world around them, the blue of the Aegean Sea, the red of sun-warmed earth, the yellow-brown of clay and grain, the white of scattered blossoms, and the soft green of new leaves. When brought together on plaster walls, these colors created a quiet, flowing language of their own. The blue that carried the sea. Indoors. Blue was perhaps the most cherished color in Minoan frescoes. It appeared in broad swaths across palace walls, curling around dolphin shapes, swirling into waves, or forming the backgrounds of scenes where women and men moved gracefully through their daily routines. This blue was not harsh or overly vivid. It had depth, like the sea on a warm afternoon, bright but soothing, reflective but steady. Painters would prepare the pigment carefully, mixing crushed minerals with lime plaster. As the plaster dried, the blue settled into it permanently, becoming one with the wall itself. In one famous hall, dolphins leap across a blue field, their bodies arched in smooth curves. Their painted motion feels so natural, so light, that visitors often pause as if expecting the dolphins to slip away from the wall and return to the actual sea. The fish surrounding them tilt their heads in playful angles, completing a scene that feels more like a memory than a painting. A memory of sunlight shimmering through water, of soft tides and quiet companionship. Red, the warmth of earth and life. Red in Minoan art glows with the heat of the island's soil. It is a color that pulses gently like embers at the bottom of a fire. Used carefully, it outlines figures, frames doorways, or gives life to clothing, pottery, or even fruit trees painted along a courtyard wall. The most famous red appears on the columns of Knossos, deep at the base, softening toward black at the top. In frescoes, red often colors skirts, belts, and decorative borders. It can be bold, yet never aggressive, marking important shapes without disturbing the gentleness of the scene. In a fresco showing people gathering flowers, the red of their garments stands out softly against the pale background. Their poses are unhurried, a person bending to pick lilies, another holding a basket lightly on their hip, a third pausing as if admiring the scent. The red details provide rhythm to the composition, guiding the eye through the peaceful moment. Yellow-brown, the color of sun and soil. The yellow and ochre tones in Minoan frescoes feel like sunlight thickened into paint. They appear in the ground, in the petals of flowers, and in the skin of figures, rendered in warm tones. These colors give the paintings a grounding sense of warmth, like afternoon light resting on stone steps, or the golden sheen on grain ready for harvest. When depicting landscapes, Minoan artists favored soft hills shaded in yellow browns, dotted with small shrubs painted in gentle dabs. Sometimes the hills slope into one another in a way that seems almost musical, as if the land itself were humming. One simple fresco shows a vase of crocus flowers, yellow with touches of white. The petals stretch upward in quiet curves, each one outlined with a clean brush stroke. The scene is so calm that it resembles a moment of stillness caught between breaths. Scenes of daily life, gentle movements, quiet joy. Unlike later civilizations that focused heavily on rulers, gods, and battles, Minoan artists preferred scenes of simple joy, people dancing, gathering harvests, playing music, or wandering near gardens. Their figures rarely appear tense or rushed. Instead, they move with the fluid ease of people comfortable in their world. In one fresco, 3 women stand together, each wearing layered skirts and colorful belts. Their hair falls in long curls, their hands gesturing in conversation. The painter captured them mid-movement, as if they were speaking softly, perhaps discussing the color of a flower or the arrangement of a festival table. Their eyes are painted as gentle lines, giving their faces a peaceful, thoughtful expression. Another fresco shows acrobats in flowing arcs, not in a dramatic display, but in a balanced, elegant motion. Their bodies curve into the air with lightness, as though gravity has softened its touch. Even the bull at the center of the scene appears calm, almost amused, as if participating willingly in a gentle dance rather than a dangerous act. Nature, blossoms, leaves, and flowing lines. Minoan artists adored nature, especially flowers. Lilies, crocuses, and papyrus blooms appear in many frescoes, painted with graceful lines that echo the motion of leaves swaying in warm breezes. The artists did not attempt perfect realism. Instead, they captured the feeling of nature, the softness of petals, the lively curve of stems, the quiet elegance of a field stirring with wind. One fresco shows a small patch of land with wildflowers blooming. The flowers tilt slightly as if greeting the sun. Their colors, white, soft yellow, warm red, blend into the surrounding landscape. The scene is peaceful, almost meditative, like a moment when someone paused during a walk and simply observed the beauty before them. The artists often combined these flowers with fluid, spiraling lines that suggest water, air, or the movement of energy across the island. These spirals appear on walls, pottery, clothing, and even in the borders of frescoes. They are the visual equivalent of a long exhale, smooth, unbroken, and deeply calming. A harmony of craft and breath. What makes Minoan frescoes truly unique is their softness. They do not overwhelm, they invite. Their colors are balanced, their lines curved and flowing, their scenes full of life yet free from tension. Standing before one feels like stepping into a gentler world where every moment is shaped by ease, every flower blooms without hurry, every figure moves without strain, every color rests in quiet harmony with the next. These frescoes tell stories, but the stories do not demand interpretation. They whisper instead of speak. They shimmer instead of shout. They invite the viewer to slow down, breathe deeply, and see the world through the calm eyes of the Minoans. A world where color was memory, where movement was poetry, and where walls themselves seemed to breathe with the gentle heart of ancient Crete. He olive groves and herb-scented air of Crete. Across the hills of ancient Crete, the olive groves spread in soft, rounded waves, trees with twisting trunks and silvery leaves that shimmer under the island's sun. These groves formed the quiet backbone of Minoan agriculture. Not only did they provide olives and oil, they shaped the land, the rhythm of work, the scent of kitchens, and the calm identity of the island itself. Standing between the groves felt like standing inside a living memory, one kept alive by wind, earth, and countless patient hands. The shape of the land. Olive trees like ancient companions. The hills of Crete are dotted with olive trees that seem half sculpture, half living being. Their trunks twist like slow, thoughtful dancers, never in a hurry, always balanced in their own gentle way. Some trunks split into two, curving outward like open arms. Others spiral upward in smooth arcs, their branches weaving into light umbrellas of leaves. When the breeze sweeps across the grove, the leaves turn on their slender stems, flashing from deep green to soft silver. This creates a gentle flickering effect, as though the trees were whispering among themselves or sharing old stories passed from root to root. Farmers who work here often joke that the trees gossip more than the villagers do, and perhaps they're not entirely wrong. The rhythm of farming. Soft steps on warm soil. Minoan farmers tend their olive trees with a slow, steady rhythm. They walk between the rows in the morning, their feet sinking slightly into the warm soil. They examine the branches with calm eyes, brushing fingertips along leaves to check their health. There is no rush, only the quiet understanding that olive trees grow at their own pace and respond best to patient hands. During the harvest, large woven mats are spread beneath the trees. Farmers carry long wooden poles polished smooth by use. They gently tap the branches, encouraging olives to fall like small raindrops onto the mats below. The sound is soft and almost musical. The tiny thuds, blending with the sigh of leaves and the low hum of insects drifting through the grove. Occasionally, an olive falls with surprising enthusiasm, bouncing once and rolling a mischievous distance away. A farmer, amused, walks slowly after it, as though indulging a playful child. "All right, little one," he might murmur while picking it up. "Your adventure ends here." The grove naturally offers no protest. Herb gardens, fragrance on the wind. Alongside the olive groves grow the island's cherished herbs: rosemary, thyme, sage, oregano, and marjoram. These herbs thrive in Crete's warm, rocky soil. They cling to hillsides, spread across small terraces, and grow between stones with a confidence that makes islanders smile. Women tend to these herb gardens with baskets slung gently over their arms. They pluck leaves with delicate fingers, collecting stems whose scent rises the moment they are touched. Rosemary releases its pine-like sharpness, thyme offers a warm sweetness, sage gives off a cool, earthy breath, and oregano carries the aroma of distant summer afternoons. The farmer's hands soon smell like an entire hillside of fragrance. Sometimes, as they walk home, the breeze picks up the scent and trails it behind them like a soft green ribbon. Neighbors who pass by lift their eyebrows and say, half jokingly, "Ah, you smell like dinner already." Olive oil, the heart of Minoan life. Once harvested, the olives are brought to simple stone presses near the villages. These presses are made of wide, flat stones, carved basins, and wooden beams. The process is steady and serene. Olives are poured into shallow channels where they are gently crushed. The oil begins to flow, thick at first, then smooth, then turning into a golden stream that settles into the basin below. The scent is warm, mildly fruity, with a hint of the sun that ripened the fruit above. It's the scent of nourishment, ritual, and home. Workers filter the oil through woven cloths until it shines like pale amber. Then it is poured into clay amphorae decorated with spirals or leaf patterns. The amphorae are sealed carefully with resin and set in cool storerooms, where they wait to be used in cooking, lighting, or soothing. Tired hands at the end of a long day. The people of Crete use olive oil with a generosity that comes from deep familiarity. Almost every dish begins with a drizzle of oil, caught by the fire in a pan, mixed into dough, or poured lightly over vegetables. Olive oil is their quiet blessing for every meal. The Minoan kitchen. Meals from earth and sea. The kitchens of Minoan households glow with the warmth of clay ovens and cooking fires. Meals are simple but full of flavor, shaped by what the island naturally offers. A pot simmering with lentils fills the air with a comforting aroma. Bread, warmed by the hearth, softens as oil is brushed across its surface. Bowls of olives, figs, cucumbers, and herbs are passed around. Cooking is never rushed. A woman stirring a pot does so calmly, occasionally lifting the wooden spoon to taste and adjust the flavors. If a goat sticks its head through the open doorway, hoping for a sample, she may shake her head with a smile and shoo it away gently. Goats, of course, believe no simply means ask again later, but it adds a bit of humor to the evening. Children help set the table by placing simple clay bowls and woven mats on the floor. They take the task seriously, though sometimes they become distracted by watching steam curl from the cooking pot or by chasing each other around the courtyard. Their laughter adds brightness to the meal like the flicker of firelight. A meal shared, calm conversation in the courtyard. As twilight settles, families often dine outdoors, surrounded by herb-scented air. The sky turns shades of rose and gold, then deepens into blue. Fireflies flicker among the vines. The meal becomes a slow, shared experience, everyone reaching for fresh bread, dipping fingers into small bowls of oil, savoring figs that burst with sweetness. Conversations drift lazily about the shape of the new moon, about how the olive trees are growing this season, about which neighbor's cat has taken to visiting every home on the hillside. No one minds the visiting cat. It simply wants to sample the island's hospitality. Near the end of the meal, someone may bring out a small clay jug of wine infused with herbs. The adults sip slowly, the children eat the remaining fruit, and everyone settles into a comfortable silence, broken only by soft breezes stirring the vines. Evening in the olive groves. After dinner, some families walk among the olive trees to enjoy the coolness of night. The grove glows faintly under the moon. The leaves whisper secrets to the darkness. A few birds settle into their nests. The scent of herbs still clings to the air, a reminder of the day's work and the island's generosity. People stroll slowly, breathing deeply, letting the tranquility of the grove settle into their bones. There is no hurry. There never is here. For the Minoans, these groves are more than farmland. They are places of memory, nourishment, fragrance, laughter, and gentle evening walks, woven into the life of Crete as tightly as threads in a woven cloth. And every night, the olive trees stand quietly, their silver leaves whispering toward the sea, their branches holding centuries of peace, their roots stirred only by the soft rhythm of the ancient island. The gentle continuity of time. On the island of Crete, time did not rush. It drifted, unspooling softly across generations like a length of woven cloth pulled slowly from a loom. Each passing year left a quiet layer upon the land, new fields, new vessels, new frescoes. Yet the heart of Minoan life remained steady. And as the seasons repeated themselves, the culture of Crete began to extend outward, carried by calm winds, wooden ships, and the gentle curiosity of the people who lived beside the sea. The Minoans did not set out to spread influence with force or ambition. Their culture traveled the way fragrance does, naturally, gradually, through encounters, exchanges, and the simple delight of sharing beauty. Across islands and coastlines of the Aegean, traces of their style began to appear. A pottery pattern here, a weaving motif there, an architectural echo in a distant port. The world around them changed slowly, but the softness of the Minoan spirit moved with time, leaving its gentle marks wherever it drifted. The Aegean as a path of connection. The sea surrounding Crete served as a great, shimmering thread, stitching together the diverse islands of the Aegean. Sailors from other lands visited the Minoan harbors, drawn not by treasures or conquest, but by the warmth of the islanders and the quality of the goods they crafted. Many arrived with small gifts from their own homelands, tiny beads, woven belts, or carved ornaments, hoping to trade for Minoan pottery, textiles, or oil. The hospitality of the Cretans left a lasting impression. Guests were welcomed with baskets of fruit, cups of cool water, and gentle conversation. Visitors rarely forgot the calm rhythm of life in the brown-red hillside homes, the peaceful flutes heard at dusk, or the vivid colors painted on palace walls. When they returned home, they carried a little piece of Crete with them, a clay jug with swirling spirals, a cloth dyed in soft red, or a story whispered to family about the island where life felt as steady as the tides. Slowly, these impressions wove themselves into the cultures of neighboring islands. Pottery styles shifted, decorative motifs changed. Even the shape of buildings began to echo the openness of Minoan architecture. Crafts that traveled far. Minoan craftsmanship had a way of spreading through the hands of those who admired it. Potters from distant shores, upon seeing the graceful lines and sea-inspired designs of Cretan vessels, carried those ideas home. Soon, in workshops far beyond Crete, jars and bowls began to show gentle spirals, flowing waves, and painted dolphins, reminiscent of the Minoan style. Weavers, too, were influenced by Cretan cloth. The soft dyes, the layered skirts, and the intricate patterns of Crete inspired new approaches in other regions. When traders arrived wearing brightly woven fabrics, locals would examine the threads with admiration. Before long, similar color palettes and weaving techniques began to appear in neighboring communities. Bronze workers from across the sea adopted certain shapes and tools learned through exchanges with Minoan artisans. They did not copy with exactness. Each region added its own variation, but the quiet influence of Crete moved outward like a ripple across water. The spread of gentle design. More than technology or goods, the Minoans shared an aesthetic, a way of seeing the world that valued harmony, movement, and softness. The lines used in Minoan art were never rigid. They curved, spiraled, and flowed like water or wind. When other cultures encountered this style, many found themselves drawn to its serene beauty. Architects on nearby islands began to leave more open spaces in their homes, adding small courtyards or windows that invited breezes. Painters experimented with natural motifs, flowers, dolphins, and birds, much like the frescoes found in Knossos and other Cretan sites. people decorated their clay jars with wavy patterns, believing perhaps that the presence of flowing lines brought calm into the home. Even festivals in some neighboring cultures adopted touches inspired by Crete. Lighter garments, circular dances, and more emphasis on simple joy rather than strict formality. Cultural exchange without pressure. What makes the Minoan influence remarkable is its gentleness. It spread without conquest, without commands, without loud proclamations. Instead, it traveled through the natural movements of daily life, through trade, friendships, shared meals, and the welcoming spirit of the island. A merchant from a northern island might buy an amphora filled with olive oil and take it home. The amphora's painted dolphins or swirling patterns catch the eye of a local artisan. That artisan tries something similar on the next vessel they create. Another potter sees this, admires it, and adds their own variation. And so the influence spreads, not as a uniform pattern, but as a quiet inspiration woven into diverse hands. The continuity within Crete. While Minoan culture reached outward, it also remained deeply rooted within the island itself. Each generation inherited not only the physical crafts, but the gentle habits of life, the way meals were shared, the way festivals welcomed everyone, the way houses opened to the hillsides and the sea. A grandmother taught her granddaughter how to weave, passing down not only the technique, but the softness of motion, the patience required to let threads align naturally. A potter taught his son how to prepare clay, explaining that the clay responded best when treated with respect and steady hands. A farmer taught his children how to read the wind, when to harvest olives, and when to let the soil rest. These teachings were not formal or strict. They were woven into conversations, gestures, and the slow passing of seasons. The Aegean mirror. How the world saw Crete. Travelers from afar often describe the island as a place where time felt different, less hurried, more spacious. When they stepped onto Cretan soil, they noticed how people walked at a comfortable pace, how laughter rose gently from courtyards, how the colors of frescoes made rooms feel alive without overwhelming. Many returned home with stories of the peaceful island, and even those who never set foot on Crete began to imagine it as a land where everything was touched by calmness. The reputation of the Minoans as graceful artisans and harmonious sailors spread across the sea, adding to the cultural continuity that stretched from Crete to distant shores. Time as a gentle companion. As decades turned into centuries, the Minoan way of life evolved but never broke. The simplicity of daily rhythms, the appreciation of beauty, the connection to land and sea, these remained constant even as the world around them shifted. The culture flowed like water around stones, adjusting subtly without losing its essence. Even today, ruins of Minoan sites show this continuity. Painted fragments of dolphins, curved staircases that catch the wind, ceramic vessels decorated with spirals. They whisper the same stories the Minoans once lived, stories of harmony, softness, and the patient passing of time. A legacy carried by quiet hands. In the end, the legacy of the Minoans was not written in monuments of power, but in the gentle influence they left across the Aegean. Their art, their crafts, their openness, and their peaceful relationships with the world around them became part of a broader tapestry of ancient Mediterranean life. Their culture continued not because it was enforced, but because it was admired, not because it demanded loyalty, but because it inspired affection, not through force, but through beauty. And as time moved forward, the soft spirit of Crete flowed on, carried by wind, waves, and the countless hands that found joy in what the Minoans created, a continuity as gentle as breath, a heritage as calm as the sea, a culture that moved with time like a quiet tide. The soft farewell of the Aegean Sea. Night falls slowly on ancient Crete, not all at once, but in a long, peaceful exhale that settles over the island like a warm cloak. The sky deepens from a muted gold into soft shades of blue, then into a darkness that glows faintly with scattered stars. Along the coastline, the Aegean Sea begins to quiet itself, letting its waves grow smaller, rounder, and more rhythmic, like the gentle heartbeat of the island preparing to rest. The day's warmth lingers in the stones, fading with patience. Every courtyard, every hillside path, every red-brown rooftop seems to hold the memory of sunlight for just a moment longer before releasing it into the night. And as the island settles, a hush spreads from the olive groves to the harbor, from the vibrant palace frescoes to the narrow village lanes. Life does not stop. It simply softens. The island slips into its evening breath. From the hills above Knossos, the last traces of daylight flicker across the curved walls and painted columns. The frescoes, so full of motion during the day, now appear still, as if they too are ready for sleep. The dolphins on the walls seem to drift into deeper waters. The lilies look as though their petals are folding inward for the night. The spirals and waves painted across pottery cool into quiet shadows. In the villages, families finish their evening meals. Clay bowls are rinsed with slow movements. Baskets are covered, and the final embers in kitchen hearths glow like small suns preparing to rest. The scent of herbs, thyme, bay, oregano, lingers in the air, mixing with the faint salt of the sea. Someone closes a wooden shutter. Someone else ties a small cloth over a jar. A goat settles near the doorway, curling its legs beneath itself as though tucking in for the night. Everything becomes gentle. Children, wrapped in woven blankets, drift toward their sleeping mats. Their eyelids flutter as they listen to the sounds outside, the distant call of a night bird, the soft rustle of leaves, and the rhythmic whisper of waves reaching the shore. They do not stay awake long. Even the most curious child feels their thoughts dissolving into the slow comfort of darkness. The sea's nighttime lullaby. Farther down the slope, the harbor rests under a low silver moon. The wooden boats, tied loosely to the dock, sway in tiny movements, barely rocking as if breathing. The ropes creak softly, a sound so smooth and familiar, it feels like part of the sea itself. Nets folded neatly on the decks exhale the faint scent of the morning's catch. But now everything is still. Sailors who earlier watched the horizon with quiet concentration now sit on the pier with their feet dangling above the water. They speak softly, or not at all. Sometimes they open amphorae of cool water and share quiet sips. Sometimes they simply watch the reflection of the moon break gently on the surface. Their minds settle, their thoughts slowing to match the sea's unhurried rhythm. When they rise to leave, their steps are slow and light, as though they fear disturbing the ocean's dreaming. Olive groves in moonlight. In the hills, the olive groves glow faintly under the moon, their leaves shimmering silver. The ancient trees stand calm and rooted, their branches swaying in the mild night wind. Even in darkness they hold their graceful shapes, curving trunks, split limbs, small round fruits, resting quietly. Farmers walking home glance over the groves with soft appreciation. These trees, guardians of the land, offer another reminder of the island's steady continuity. The farmers feel the same quiet assurance in their own steps, as they follow pathways lit only by moonlight and the occasional oil lamp flickering in a neighbor's courtyard. The quiet between heartbeats. Inside the brown-red hillside homes, a deeper silence takes hold. Threads left beside the looms rest in tidy bundles. Half-woven baskets pause mid-pattern. Tools used in bronze work cool on stone tables. Pottery, freshly painted with spirals and floral touches, waits on shelves for morning. Even domestic cats, who often wander lazily from home to home, curl into round shadows and drift into sleep. The people of the household lie on their mats, listening to the gentle stir of curtains, the small shift of a woven rug, and the steady hum of nighttime insects. Their breathing slows, matching the island's slow exhale. Dreams begin to curl around them, dreams of terraces bathed in sunlight, of dolphins gliding beneath clear waves, of long dances performed in circles under warm skies. They do not chase dreams. The dreams come to them like a slow tide, time gently passing. Everywhere across Crete, time loosens its grip. There is no urgency now, no decision to be made, no task calling for attention. The night belongs only to calmness, carried from house to house, grove to grove, shore to shore. It is a time when everything on the island becomes part of the same soft rhythm, breathing in, breathing out. Even the Palace at Knossos, grand in daylight, feels small and serene beneath the stars. The stones cool, the stairways cast long, gentle shadows, and the open spaces wait quietly as though holding space for the coming dawn. The whisper of the Aegean. Out on the water, the Aegean Sea glimmers with starlight. Its waves nudge the shore in slow pulses, singing to the island in a language older than any fresco, older than any pot, older than every footstep that has crossed Crete's soil. The song is not loud. It is barely more than a whisper. Yet it carries a deep, endless warmth. The sea is saying goodnight. The sea is saying rest. The sea is saying you are safe. This is the softest part of the night, the moment when everything blends. The wind, the darkness, the quiet glow of the moon, the faint sweetness of herbs still warming the air. The world seems to float, timeless, suspended in calm. A final drift into sleep. As you listen to this world, as you feel its rhythm, something inside you softens too. Your breath slows like the tide at night, your thoughts quiet, drifting far from shore. You feel the ancient calm of Crete seep gently through you, the peace of olive groves, the softness of painted walls, the lullaby of waves, the familiar warmth of clay homes nestled against the hillside. This is where the journey rests. Let the island cradle you. Let the sea's whisper guide you. Let the night wrap around you like the softest woven cloth. Crete sleeps now. The Aegean sleeps. And you, carried gently by their calm, are already drifting deeper and deeper into the quiet of ancient dreams.